Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. We've seen crowdfunding in real estate gain a lot of popularity, a lot of traction over the last several years, offering access to individual institutional grade assets for retail traders. Realty Mogul, one of the leaders in the space, and we're joined here by Realty Mogul CEO Julienne Helman. Julienne, it's good to talk to you today. This is a space that we have seen really grow over the last several years, but I wonder if you can just kind of walk us through, for those who are not familiar with how exactly this is executed, how an investor who is not accredited can get in on some of these commercial real estate deals.
Sure. So Realty Mogul is an online platform for investors to invest in commercial real estate deals. And we do due diligence on every investment to make sure that it meets our minimum requirements. And we provide detailed information on each deal so that investors can make their own decision if the risk or reward profile is right for their unique financial situation. Non-accredited investors can invest into our REITs, or real estate investment trusts. They're legally public entities, so that means that they're available to all investors, both accredited investors and non-accredited investors. They create an account on our website, they make a couple clicks of a button, and boom, they become investors in commercial real estate. It's really that easy.
So what do maybe investors get with you guys over some of the other options out there, whether it is, real estate ETFs or REITs, competitive REITs? Because I assume maybe more flexibility into some of the projects specifically on your platform. So what's the biggest difference?
Yeah, there's a variety of platforms that are allowing investors to get into real estate. There's platforms that help investors buy a single family home and put a dedicated property manager in place. There's platforms like ours that offer diversified REITs, and we also investments in individual properties. So accredited investors can pick and choose an individual deal, an individual apartment building, retail shopping center, office building is an example. And then there's also platforms like 10X that allow investors to buy whole real estate deals through auction. So a variety of different platforms. I think our aim is to make it as simple as possible and to make it as passive as possible. So an investor comes online, couple clicks of a button, they buy into a real estate transaction, and it's really set it and forget it. There's nothing for the investor to do beyond that.
Julienne, we've seen some real resilience in the housing market throughout this pandemic, largely driven by these record low mortgage rates we've been seeing. But you've got some visibility on the overall real estate sector, not just looking at residential, but commercial as well. What's your sense right now in terms of how much hotter it can run? And on the commercial side, are you starting to see a bounce back?
Yeah, so in apartments in particular, through the Realty Mogul platform, there's been investments in over 15,000 apartment units. So we have some really, really good data across the country on apartments. They're holding up spectacular. So it's been shocking, but also not surprising when you look at not only interest rates, but also federal stimulus. And now with the rent relief bill, there's going to be $25 billion that comes back into the economy for back rent, which I think is going to be really, really critical. And our commercial assets are also doing very well. I think that the assets that are doing very poorly are hospitality and retail. Thankfully, we don't have much exposure to those asset classes, but I do believe that people are going to go back to retail shopping centers. I do believe that, work travel is going to come back, and you're going to see a bounce back in those commercial markets. In apartments in particular, it's never been hotter. There is tremendous competition to buy apartments today. The difference between the interest rates where you can finance them and the cap rates, which dictate the purchase price where you can buy them, there's an acceptable spread there. So investors can earn cash on cash returns. And there is so much capital that is trying to get into the apartment space. So we've seen that hold up very, very well. And we've seen other asset classes hold up very well as well, other than hospitality and retail, which has been the hardest hit in this pandemic.
Yeah, the accredited, non-accredited distinction there is important to highlight, because that's one thing that I think, irks a lot of retail investors out there, that they might not be able to get into specific deals. But when it comes to maybe flexibility around the markets that they could pursue, whether it is an ETF through the REITs or, specific deals for accredited investors, what are you seeing on your platform for spaces that do seem hottest? Because we've been talking a lot about specific markets out there in the US that still are garnering quite a bit of attention, even this far in the real estate boom.
Yeah, capital's chasing growth. So markets like Phoenix, Dallas, Columbus, Raleigh, Charlotte, I'd say from a state perspective, it's all about states with low or no income taxes. Washington, Texas, Florida, which unsurprisingly are markets where there's job growth and there's population growth. I mean, it's kind of shocking to think in the middle of COVID, how many companies have announced that they're moving their headquarters, and a lot of those, to Texas. So it's unsurprising that those markets are the growth markets. And that's where there's a tremendous amount of appetite from both retail investors and institutional investors to expand their portfolios in those markets.
Yeah, and interesting products like yours to start accessing some of these spaces that maybe people hadn't been able to before. So appreciate you coming on here to share that with us. Realty Mogul CEO Julienne Helman, once again, thanks for coming on.